Well, yogurt is just one of some basic grocery items that are expected to see sizable price hikes this year, increases that may even change what Americans are buying and eating. Sarah Eisen has more on the food inflation that's coming to a supermarket near you.
Food inflation is coming. A new report from the United Nations showing food prices jumped last month by the most in more than a year and a half after a long decline. According to the UN Food Commodity Price Index, cereal prices were up over 3% from January to February of this year. Vegetable oil up nearly 5%, dairy up 3%, sugar up just over 6%. Meat, however, was down. The reasons? All of the abnormal weather, not just in the United States, but around the globe. Global unrest also leading to supply issues. There's also a growing thirst for milk in Asia. With that growth, more product from the U.S. is being exported. The question is, when does it show up in your grocery aisle? Mostly, it's a 6 to 9 month lag because costs for the big companies are mostly locked in. So when you start hearing guidance or forecast from these companies into 2015, you'll hear about this price spike and you'll hear about higher prices on the shelves. The prices might show up earlier for dairy and hamburgers. Those are the exceptions because they're harder for companies to hedge. McDonald's, for instance, taking its burger on the dollar menu from 2 meat patties to 1. David Palmer, an analyst at RBC, says Kraft is another company set to raise prices earlier because it too has a lot of meat and dairy. Although not all companies are willing to go out on a limb and say there's a problem, at least not yet.
We feel pretty good about our commodity positions for the next 12 months and don't expect any additional issues. We have been dealing with an issue on egg whites, which is interesting as McDonald's and Subway and others have gone to healthier options in their breakfast offerings with egg whites. It's driven the price of egg whites up. We buy quite a bit of egg whites, so we've been dealing with that. But I think overall, we think near term, we're in pretty good shape.
Note that we've seen higher grain prices as well on the back of the Ukrainian conflict. Ukraine is a big exporter of wheat and corn. Still, analysts that follow these consumer companies say it's deflationary, meaning for the General Mills of the world and others that make bread and cereals, those input costs are actually still helping margins unless they continue to march higher or stay elevated. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Sarah Eisen.
So where are food prices headed overall? Let's turn to Farah Aslam for some answers. Farah, welcome. She's the managing director at Stevens. So how big overall are these price rises likely to be and how long lasting?
So we believe that you're definitely going to see food inflation, particularly in the periphery of the store, in your milk aisle, your produce section. We do expect those prices to be short-lived through sort of the midsummer before they start to moderate going into the back half of the year, assuming that the U.S. crop is in good shape this year.
It hits consumers, though, at a time when, the economic recovery, although it's progressing, certainly has not been able to be characterized as strong. How is it going to hit consumers, do you think?
We do believe that consumers are going to feel some of the pinch. About 13% of U.S. Food expenditures is on food, and we think that consumers will perhaps tend to economize by eating a few more meals at home rather than out at restaurants.
How long lasting is the rise in the price of milk likely to be? Sarah just reported on demand from China and elsewhere, and that coupled with some weather effects, are causing milk prices to go up.
Absolutely. You're seeing milk hit all-time highs just right now, and you should see it on the grocery shelf within a month or two. We think milk prices will peak out here in the next 3 months before declining seasonally because you are starting to see the spring flush come in. That being said, if China continues to import record amounts of dairy, you are going to see long-term elevated dairy prices. And this is hitting some of our companies, notably Dean Foods, the largest U.S. milk company, has had trouble passing along these higher costs and has therefore missed earnings, and their stock is down about 20 to 25% in the last 6 months.
You kind of read my mind because I was going to ask you how much pricing power some of these companies do have. I mean, Dean obviously has not had enough pricing power. That's hit its bottom line. But what about other companies out there? Is the economy strong enough so that they do have some pricing power to get consumers to still buy their goods and still be able to keep their margins intact?
Absolutely. Our companies are really very conscious of the fact that U.S. household incomes remain constrained despite the recent rises in Wall Street prices. And therefore, you're seeing them being very cautious in how they're pricing their products. Generally, they're waiting until they absolutely have to increase prices, and in some cases, absorbing some of the inflation and offsetting it with efficiency programs. But after a certain point, you are seeing them pass it along. For example, you've seen Hormel hold the price on Spam for the last few years, but with hogs hitting all-time highs, they are now taking pricing on this iconic product.
Oh, well, my goodness, higher Spam prices coming, Farah. Thank you very
They're
much.
coming. A
We
pleasure.
appreciate it. Farah Aslam, Managing Director at Stephens. Sue?